Now, when building your apps, a lot of people think that this is the most optimal architecture here, but it is not. There's actually a much better way to architect your apps that makes the user experience a lot more seamless and a lot more user-friendly. And so in today's video, I'm going to be showing you a much more optimal way that you can architect your apps. And best of all, I'm going to be showing you a tool that allows you to bring all of these components together and build truly optimal, efficient, and user-friendly apps. And if you stick around until the end of the video, I'm going to be showing you some extra things that you can do thanks to this amazing tool. Now, before we get started, as always, all the apps and all the resources that I talk about on this channel, you can get access to them and clone them via our amazing Patreon community. And if you're still not a member of our incredible, rapidly growing Patreon community, then you can learn more and hopefully become a member via the link in the description below the video. Now, when it comes to building web apps, a lot of people rely on this architecture diagram when it comes to kind of architecting the different pieces and the different components of their app. And this is a very, very common architecture diagram, but this is not the most optimal way to architect your apps. In fact, the best way to do it is by removing this right here and dragging this thing here up on top. Okay, and so what you want to do is you want to be using your Supabase database when it comes to managing your data. So things like adding records, updating records, or deleting records, you want to be able to interface with your database for these operations. Now, when it comes to searching, you want to be using a different database, a database that's much more specialized to finding the specific data that the user is looking for and displaying it to the user in the shortest amount of time possible. And for that, you have lots and lots of options, but one of the most popular ones when it comes to building your web apps, your mobile apps, is Algolia. And so in today's video, I'm going to be showing you a way that you can set up an amazing app architecture that allows the right operations when it comes to your database, but also allows you to have lightning fast searches. And for that, we're going to set up our Supabase database first. So here I am inside of my Supabase dashboard here. I actually went ahead and created a table here that's going to be storing products in this case. And this table has just two fields that we're going to start out with. But a little bit later in the video, we're going to be adding a couple of other fields that are going to be doing interesting things. So definitely stay tuned for that. So right now we have name and price here. And we also have our Algolia, right? So I went ahead and I logged into my free account. And if I click here, I can see that I have my applications here. So if I go to this overview here, I can see that I have my applications. So I can see all my applications. I went ahead and created another app here. This is the app that we're going to be using. And if I click on this app here, as you can see, we don't have anything just yet, right? So if I go into search, we have no records that just yet. Now, the problem with the setup right now is if I go ahead and create a record here, so let's say I create a product here and I call it like potato chips here and the price is $3, that record is created here, but it is not created in this indexed here. And we need to make sure that whatever we have here is also in our index, because when the user searches for stuff, we are not going to be searching our Supabase. We're going to be searching Algolia here. And so what we need to ensure is anytime we have any data here, that data is synced seamlessly in our Algolia database. But also anytime we modify the data here, that data is also modified in our Algolia. And of course, anytime we delete this data here, that data is also deleted in our Algolia database indexes. And this is a pain in the neck because you have to worry about syncing all of this together. You need to make sure that, you know, the data that you have in your Supabase is the exact data that you have in Algolia, that it never diverges, that it's always the exact same data. And if you were going to do it manually, it will be a pain in the neck. And there's an amazing tool that allows you to connect all your data sources in a seamless and easy to use manner. And this tool is called BuildShip. BuildShip is an amazing tool that allows you to do a lot of amazing things. And one of them is to make sure that the data is automatically synced up. And so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a couple of important workflows that will ensure that any data in our Supabase database is automatically replicated in our Algolia database as well. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here and I'm going to create a new workflow. Now we're actually going to be creating two workflows. The first workflow will deal with new and existing data. So basically, anytime we create a new record in our Supabase database, we're also going to be creating a new record in our Algolia database. And anytime we're going to be updating existing records, they will also be updated in our Algolia index as well. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this upsert data. Okay, upsert stands for insert or update. Okay, so we're going to say create here, and we have here a new workflow. Now, anytime you create a workflow, you need to create a trigger, right? Something needs to trigger this workflow, okay? And so for this, we're going to click here, and here we can select a bunch of triggers. Now, for this specific use case, the trigger that we want to use is this Supabase trigger right here, okay? So we're going to select this Supabase trigger. We're going to add this trigger, and we are going to configure this. Now, before you're able to configure it here, you want to make sure that you log in with your Supabase account first. Now, as you can see, I already logged in with my Supabase account. If you're using this for the first time, this is probably going to be red or pink. So you want to make sure that you add your Supabase account, and that essentially tells Supabase that, you know, BuildShip wants to have access to this data. It wants to know what's happening as well, because it's helping you manage your Supabase data and your Supabase account. Okay, so once you have this connected, the next thing that you need to do is you need to jump back to your Supabase account, and you want to go into project settings, and you want to copy this reference ID. So I'm going to copy this right here. I'm going to jump back into BuildShip, and I'm going to paste it here. Okay, the next thing that we need to do is we need to click on events, and we need to select the events that we are interested in receiving notifications. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to do insert and update. I'm going to click on done. And finally, I need to specify the table that we care about. Okay, so if you come back here, the table that we actually care about is this B products table. Okay, so I'm going to jump back into BuildShip, and it's in the public schema. And here I'm just going to put B products. Okay, and so at this point, we have our trigger node. Okay, so our workflow will get triggered anytime that there is a new record or an update on this table here. Okay, so we can ship it, we can, you know, deploy it onto the cloud, we can see what happens, right? If you were to deploy it right now, you will be seeing events, right? But the problem is there's nothing happening, right? We have a trigger, but just having a trigger by itself is not enough. We actually need to create more logic that will do something special. And so the next node that we're going to create is we're going to click here, and we're going to select an API call. And the purpose of this API call node would be to insert or update a specific record in our Algolia database. Now, Algolia has lots of different ways, lots of APIs that allow you to access your index, right? So if you jump into Algolia documents here, right, this is Algolia documentation, you have this API reference, right? And the two main API endpoints that we really care about is the search endpoint, which is what we're going to be using from our FlutterFlow app, from our front-end app, and this object endpoint. And so when it comes to BuildShip, the API that we're going to be working with is this objects endpoint, because this allows us to do things such as add or replace an object, also delete an object, among other things as well. And so right now, what we want to do is we want to add or replace an object. So if you click here, you're going to be seeing this REST API here that you can use in order to add or update or replace an object if that object already exists. And so we're going to jump back into BuildShip and we're going to configure it. So the first thing that we want to do is we need to make sure that we're using the right method. So if you jump back here, we're going to be using this thing here, and this is a post method. So we're going to come here, we're going to say post. The URL is provided to us, right? So if we come here, we see this URL here. Okay, so we're going to copy this and we need to make a couple of changes. Paste this here. Now we have this URL. If you click here, you open that up and you need to modify two things. Well, you need to specify your application ID here, right? So if you jump back into Algolia and you're going to see it here. So you can also click here and you can copy. We're using this app 2 here, which is this current one. So I'm going to copy this application ID, jump back into BuildShip and paste it in here. And the second thing that you need to modify is the actual index, right? So we need to specify what index are we working with. And if you click over here, you can see that we actually have an index created. Now, if you don't have that, you can simply create an index, call it whatever you want. But you can think of an index as a table in your relational database, such as Superbase. So in Superbase, we have different tables. Here you have indexes. Okay, so I already have an index created called products. You can simply click here and you can create your own index. Okay, and so I'm going to jump back into BuildShip and I'm going to replace this with products. Okay, so now we have a URL set up. Okay, the next thing that we need to do is we need to specify our API keys, right? So, because if you go back to Algolia here and you go into the search API reference, we need these two headers. Okay, so this is very, very important. We need an API key and we need the application ID. So the application ID we know, but the API key for that, you need to come over here. And what you want to do is you want to go into our settings here. And you're going to be on this API keys, right? So if you click on settings here, you can click on API keys. And here you're going to be seeing all the various keys that you can use. So there's a search only API key. There's an admin API key. Now, when it comes to searching our index, we're going to be using this search only API key. But right now, we need to actually add objects, modify objects, delete objects. And for that, we're going to be using this admin API key. And so I'm going to copy this here and I'm going to jump into BuildShip. Now, the thing about BuildShip is that we need to enter two headers, right? So if you jump back into our API reference, we need to enter these two headers. And the best way to do that is by doing it manually, right? So if you come over here, you can see that it's adding this authorization here, and we're going to be doing it manually here. So I'm going to go ahead and paste this here, and that essentially adds two headers with the specific key and the specific value directly into the node here. Okay, and that is the best way to kind of do it. We're gonna hit save and we don't have to enter anything here. Okay, for query parameters, we don't need to enter anything, but for the body, we might need to enter something. So if we come back here, you see the body is actually a list of different things that we want to save in that index. Okay, so this is the format here. It's a simple JSON with key value pairs. And so here, I don't even need to copy it. It's a very, very simple format. And so what we can do is we can jump back into BuildShip and we can create this body ourselves. Okay, we can create it based on the data that we are inserted, right? Because anytime that this is triggered, we're going to be getting the values that are used to trigger this event. So whether this is an insert or an update or a delete, we're going to know exactly what the data is, okay? And that is the value that we're going to be passing to this body. Now, for content side, you want to make sure that you have application JSON here. And for await, you can just put on true, although it doesn't really matter because this is the last node here, okay? And so now we are ready to ship this workflow and test it out. Okay, now when I'm testing things, I like to create a logging node, right? So what I like to do is I like to enter a logging node here and then log this request to see exactly what kind of data that I'm working with, right? So I'm going to click here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to request body and I'm going to log the entire request body. That way I can see exactly the data that is used to trigger this node so that I can use it here. Okay, so now we're going to click on ship. we have an error and it's telling us that body is not an object. So we're going to put an empty body right here and we are going to ship it. We're going to deploy it. I'm going to wait a couple of moments here. Okay, workflow successfully deployed. And so what this means is that anytime we create a new record or update an existing record, it's going to trigger that workflow. It's not going to create an object in our index just yet. That is something we're going to do in a second. But right now, we'll at least see if things are working as expected. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to insert a new record and see what happens in our BuildShip node here. So I'm going to click here, insert a row, and I'm going to put something like orange juice here. And the price, let's say $5. I'm going to hit save. And when I hit save, this thing should trigger, right? So we're going to open up this log panel here. We're going to refresh it and see what happened here. Okay, so that should trigger. Okay, and now you see success. Okay, so this node has triggered, right? So we're going to expand this, and here you're seeing all the log messages for all the nodes and kind of everything that's happening, right? So if you open this log message to console, you're going to be seeing the request that has been logged, right? So here you see the record, you see the type is insert, schema is public, table is B products, and we don't have an old record, right? Old record is something that you're going to see if you are updating, right? If you're updating, that way you're going to see the new and the old, okay? And so here we're going to open this up, and in this record, we are seeing the data, right? We're seeing the data. We're seeing kind of what's happening here, okay? And you can kind of copy it and so that you can have it. And so what I'm going to do is I can essentially reference it by the record, right? So now I know, I know the data that I'm working with, right? So now I can create a body inside this post request that will insert or update an object into our Algolia index here. Okay, so I'm going to click here. And so here I can create a record or an object into our existing index in Algolia. And the beauty here is that you can include any value that you want, right? You can include, 10 different, key value pairs. You can include 2 key value pairs. It's really up to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to include, price. I'm going to include ID, and I'm going to include the name. Okay. So I'm going to click here and I'm going to say, well, price is here. And what is the price? Well, I can just type record here and price. Okay. And then comma. Next, I'm going to say name. Okay. And the same thing, record and name. And last but not least, we also want to include the ID, but the ID has a special name in Algolia. Okay, so if you jump back here, you can see that the ID has a special name. It's called object ID. Okay, so that's the only thing that you really need to worry about. And this allows Algolia to know the specific ID for a record or an object in your index, and that way you can create a new one and then you can update it or delete it later. This is very, very important. And so we're going to copy this and jump back into BuildShip, and I'm going to say object ID, and object ID is going to be the ID in our Supabase database. Okay, and that is all that we need to do. So that way we are going to be creating a new object in our existing Algolia index with these key value pairs. Okay, so price, name, and object ID. If we had more, we would have included more. Okay, but right now this is enough. Okay, so I'm going to exit out, and this is enough, right? So we have the post, we have the HTTP method here, we have the URL, we also have the authorization stuff with the API keys that we have included right inside the node. We are not passing any query parameters, and we have this body right here. Content type is application JSON, and await is true, although that doesn't really matter because this is the last node. Okay, so we're going to click on ship here, and hopefully next time we create a new record, we are going to be including that record right in our Algolia index as well. Okay, so this has been deployed successfully. Now let's jump back here and let's go ahead and create a new row. So let's think about what we want. So let's say this is let's say we put Gouda cheese, and let's say it's $8. And once we create this new record, that's going to trigger that BuildShip workflow here, and we should have a new object in our Algolia. So let's jump into Algolia and see if we have a new object waiting for us, right? So we're going to come here to the main screen here. We have this app. And if we jump into Algolia, guess what we see? We have our very first object in our index, in our products index. And it says here, object ID is 201. And this should match with our Supabase record that was just created. Name is Gouda cheese, and we also have more attributes. Price is 8. And if we jump into our Supabase, we can see that this record has an ID of 201. And so this is great because when we created a new record here, that record was automatically created in the index as well, which is exactly what we want. Now, the nice thing about Algolia is that it uses the exact same API when it comes to adding or replacing an object. Okay, so when it comes to updating an object, we don't really need to do anything. Okay, it's the exact same API. And we just need to make sure that we're passing this object ID. It's very, very important to pass that object ID. And so if we jump back into BuildShip and we take a look at our body, we have this object ID. And so now let's go ahead and try to modify an existing record, at least the record that we know is stored in Algolia, because we have a couple of other records that are not stored. So we're going to delete those records and we're going to be modifying the record that we know is stored in Algolia. So I'm going to jump back into our Supabase here. I'm going to delete these records because they're not stored in Algolia, because these records were included before we had the trigger working. And so now we have this one record here. And so I'm going to go ahead and modify this. So it's no longer Gouda cheese, but now it's cheddar cheese. Okay, so I'm going to say this cheddar cheese. I'm going to press enter, and hopefully this flow should have also triggered, and we should see the updated data in our Algolia as well. So if I come back here, we have this one success. If we refresh it, we have more of these success. That means our workflow was triggered again. And so now we can jump back into Algolia and refresh this right here, or you can simply click that button there that does the same thing. And now it says cheddar cheese, okay? And so this simplifies it a lot, because inserting and updating, as long as you include that object ID, can be done from one API call. And as a result, you do not need to create another workflow. You can just create one workflow and have insert and update, and that's going to be both inserting and updating records in our Algolia. But we're still missing one important operation, because if I was to delete this, let's say we're no longer selling cheddar cheese and somebody went ahead and deleted it, right? It's no longer on sale. We would still have cheddar cheese in our search index, which means that people would still find it, okay? And so what we need to do is we need to create another workflow with a different API endpoint, because if you jump here to Algolia's API reference, we want to be using this API endpoint. This is going to be a different HTTP method. So a lot of different things. So this means it's, we need to create another workflow. Okay, we cannot do 3 operations in that same exact workflow. Now, the easiest way would be to simply duplicate this workflow, because we have a lot of things set up. I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to come here. I'm going to click on settings, and I'm going to say delete data. Okay, I'm going to hit save. And now we have our delete data workflow, right? So we still have this, except we're going to say delete now. Okay, and I'm just going to log this as well, just to see what's happening. And for this API call, this is going to be a different call. We're going to be doing delete. And if we jump back into our documentation here, delete object. In this case, all we need to do is pass this URL with the object ID. Okay, we don't need to pass the body or anything like that, just the ID. And so we're going to jump back here. And here we're going to open this up, and in this case we just need to pass the object ID. And so we're going to come in here, and what we can do is we can insert a variable. So we have request body, and what we can do is we can do old record, right? Because when you delete stuff, it becomes an old record. It's no longer a record, it's an old record. So we're going to come to this old record, and we are going to say ID. And that is all that you need to do, okay? So you want to make sure that your body is empty. Body is empty. In fact, you can just do it like this. Content type application JSON, await, you can just leave it untrue. And that's all you need to do. So we're going to deploy this right now. All right, so our second workflow has now been deployed, and it's going to trigger anytime we're deleting a record in this table here. Okay, so it's going to execute this API call, and that should hopefully delete the stuff in our index as well, the objects in our index. So I'm going to jump back here and I'm going to delete this record. Okay, so I'm going to click here, hit delete, and if everything has been set up properly, we should no longer be seeing the object in our Algolia index. So I'm going to jump back into Algolia, and I'm going to hit refresh, and we have no records. Because when we deleted that record in our Supabase, it has been automatically deleted here. And if we jump back into BuildShip, we should see a logging message. So if we hit refresh here, we should be seeing the success. And you can open this log message to console, open this up, and you're going to be seeing this old record. Remember, it's no longer record, it's old record, because when it comes to Supabase, anytime you're inserting a record, updating, the new record is the record, the old record is the old record. When you're deleting, it's no longer there, so it becomes an old record. Okay, so you need to reference it like this. And so now we've come full circle. We are able to insert, update records, and they're going to be reflected in our Algolia search index, and we can also delete records, and they're going to be deleted in our Algolia search index. And so now let me show you a fully working proof of concept app that I built using an amazing no-code builder called FlutterFlow that allows the users to search for various products directly in our Algolia index. But before we do that, let's go ahead and create a couple of products here. So at least we'll have something that the user can search for. So we're going to create the first product. This is going to be Gouda cheese, our favorite. Let's say it's $7. Save that. Okay, create another product here. Let's say this is cheddar cheese. Let's say it's $8. And one more product, we're gonna call it orange juice. Let's say it's $3. Okay, now if we jump back into our Algolia index and we click this button, we should see these three products. And here they are, right? Object ID, all these products. And these object IDs are going to be matching the record IDs in our Supabase database. So we have here 300, 267, 234, and here 300, 267, 234, the exact ones, okay? So now that we have a couple of records in our Algolia search index, let me show you the app. And so this is the app here. It allows users to search for various products using our Algolia search database, our Algolia search index, and we can also add products to our Supabase and have them reflected in our index as well. So let me go ahead and run this app so that you can see exactly how it works. All right, so here's the app. So when you load this app, even before you search for anything, you're seeing all the objects in our Algolia search index. Okay, so we have these three items in our search index. So now I can search for something. Let's say I want juice. I can type juice, press enter, and I see juice. I can delete all that, and now I'm seeing everything back. I can type cheese, and now I'm seeing the two cheeses here. Okay, I can type a specific cheese. Okay, and now I'm seeing the specific cheese. Now the searching is lightning fast, and because we only have three items, you're not really seeing the difference. But if you're building a serious production ready app, you're definitely going to see the difference between this and something else that's not specialized for searching. Okay, so this is amazingly fast. And another thing that we can do is we can add another product directly into our Supabase database and then search for it right here. So if you click here, I can add another product. So let's say I want to add another product, and this is like pasta. Okay, so pasta bolognese, something like this, and let's say it's like, I don't know, $5. I can add this product, and now I can search for it, right? So I can type pasta, and there's pasta right here. I can delete that, and I'm seeing all the products here. And so this app is the best of both worlds. For searching, we are using our Algolia search index that is perfectly synced to our Supabase database. And for managing products, we're using our Supabase database, right? So more specifically, if you click here, this interacts with our Supabase database, which is exactly how it should be. And so now if I jump back into our Supabase dashboard, let's say I modify this pasta bolognese, and I call it something like Italian, pasta Italian, or let's say we do Italian pasta or something like that. And I press enter, and then I change this Gouda cheese to Havarti cheese. Okay, and now if I jump back into the app here and I type Italian, it's gonna find Italian pasta. Okay, and if I do that, you're gonna be seeing Havarti cheese. I type cheese, it's gonna find these two cheeses here. Okay, it's automatically updated in our Algolia index. It's all seamless, it's all automatic, which is awesome. And that has been a big issue for a lot of people that want to create this kind of setup, but they're confused in terms of how to sync stuff, right? Now, let's say I delete it. Let's say I delete this Havarti cheese. I click here. It should automatically be deleted in our Algolia index as well. So if I head back to Algolia and I refresh it, I should not see Havarti, right? So I'm seeing 3 records, number of records is 3, and I'm not seeing Havarti cheese. So if I jump back into the app here and I type Havarti, I should not see anything. And I type Havarti here, I should not be seeing Havarti because it's no longer there. Okay, so this works really, really well. And the way I built this app, this is just a standard app. We're just using this Algolia API here. We have it all set up. And we're also using Supabase as well for adding new records. And if you guys want to see exactly how I made it work, like all the details, you will be able to clone this exact app as a member of our amazing Patreon community. So definitely check it out and get access to this app. Now, as a result of using BuildShip for this kind of data backend setup, this data optimization, there is a lot of other things that we can do because these BuildShip workflows have access to the data, right? They know when the data is created, they know when the data is modified, and they know when the data is deleted. And so they can modify this data, they can notify somebody, they can send us an email. There's lots and lots of things that we can do. So one interesting thing that I want to do is when you create a new product, I want to ask ChatGPT to go out and write a description for us. Just create a description for this product that we can display on our website automatically. This is going to save us time from actually thinking about the description and creating it ourselves. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another column here. I'm going to call it description, and this column type is going to be text, and I'm going to hit save, and I'm going to drag it right here. I'm going to put it after name. Next, I'm going to jump back into BuildShip, and so anytime a new record is created, I wanted to ask ChatGPT and help us create a description, kind of an interesting one-sentence description that we can use in our app, kind of to display the products and to tell users about these products. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a new node before this API call so that we can create an interesting description. So I'm going to click here and I'm going to do text generation here. I'm going to do this node here, and I'm going to insert all my things. And first, I want to make sure that we're using GPT-4 Turbo. I'm going to leave all of this here. I'm going to go ahead and fetch my API key. Here's my API key. And for the system prompt, I'm just going to say, create a unique one-sentence description for the provided product. Okay? And the user prompt is just going to be the product, right? So we have the product request body. We're going to go into record here. And here, we're going to put record name, okay, because that's the product, right? The product's name. And this here is going to create the description for the specified product. Now, another thing that I like to do is I like to test this node out, okay? So for the user prompt, I'm just going to put Italian pasta because that's the product that we're going to be passing, and everything else I'm just going to leave on default. And I'm going to run this node and see what it comes up with. All right, and this is what it came up with. Savor the authentic taste of Italy with this premium artisan crafted pasta made from the finest durum wheat semolina for a perfect al dente texture every time. And this is awesome. And so at this point, you know that this node works. You can also update the output schema here. That's going to make it easier to kind of look up the output here. And now we can use the value that we've got here, the description, in our body. So I'm going to click after name. I'm going to put description. And here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into value. I'm going to go text generation, and I'm going to insert this text here, okay? Because we know it's text, and that is it. And now I'm going to hit ship. That's going to go ahead and deploy it. And so now when we create a new product, it's going to go ahead and generate a description for the product, and it's going to send it to our Algolia search index. Just a little fun thing that we can do. So jump back here. Let's say we insert a new row, and let's say the product is wheat bread, and let's say the price is $3, and we're not including a description. I'm going to hit save, and now it's going to be doing a bunch of things. Let's jump back into Algolia and see what we have. So we're going to refresh this. We have more attributes, and this is the description that I came up with. This wheat bread is wholesome, fiber-rich, loaf-baked to perfection with a nutty flavor and a satisfying chewy texture, ideal for a hearty sandwich or a toasty breakfast treat. Okay, so this is another thing that you can do when you are using BuildShip to control the data that you're working with. You can synchronize this data with different places. You can also back up this data. You can, use ChatGPT to generate pieces of this data. You can maybe validate this data. Lots of amazing things that you can do, things that people may have previously thought are too complicated or too cumbersome to achieve if you had to do it manually. So definitely check out BuildShip and start creating your workflows. Now, this was a feature-packed video. I talked about a lot of different things. I built a really cool FlutterFlow app. I built some workflows. I built lots of things. And so if you guys want to build apps with Algolia, you want to make sure that, you're getting your search results to your users in record time. It's all nice. You want to use ChatGPT to generate descriptions or do some validation or do something else. The best way to get started is by getting access to all of these resources that I talked about in today's video. And when you become a member of our amazing Patreon community, you're going to have access to everything that I talked about today, which means you're going to get access to this app. You'll be able to view and or clone it. I'll also include my BuildShip workflow so that you can get started right away and build amazing, practical, and robust apps. But that's not all. When you join our amazing Patreon community, you're going to get access to all the apps that I have on this channel. And there's more than 160 apps in all kinds of different niches, from very, very simple apps to more intermediate to complex apps that I built over a span of many days, even a couple of weeks. They're all there, all ready for you to view and or clone them. But that's not all. When you join our amazing Patreon community, you're going to get access to extra content such as Q&As, live streams, behind the scenes content, and our Patreon supported masterclass, where I do deep dives on various topics, tools, apps, you name it, that the community wants to know more about. And in fact, in the next few days, maybe early next week, I'm going to be doing another value-packed masterclass on a very, very cool topic that I'm sure you are going to learn a lot from and get a ton of value from. But above all, when you join our amazing Patreon community, you're going to be supporting this channel and supporting my work, and that is greatly, greatly appreciated. So if all of that sounds like something that might interest you and you feel you might gain some amazing value from, then I definitely urge you to check out our amazing Patreon community and become a member. And so hopefully I'll see you inside the community.